Why, hello there. It's Michael Osinski.
Oh, it's Michael Osinski. It's also Tyler Esselman.
Yeah, that's who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this one goes to 11.
This one goes to 11. We all are. This is a podcast. It's a podcast about music. And it's a podcast where Michael and I each week invite one of our friends, loved ones, collaborators, members of our community to come onto the pod and make their case, make a case for the perfection of an album, make a case for an album that means a lot to them and one that they believe to be quote unquote perfect.
So quote unquote perfect that 10 out of 10 just isn't good enough.
Mm-hmm. Just doesn't cut it.
Mm-mm.
This week, we are talking to the inimitable Ashlyn Lozano. This is a big one, folks. This is Ash. This is Ash. Okay, if you don't know Ashlyn Lozano is a theater artist, administrator, and Viggo Mortensen stan based in Chicago, Illinois. A graduate of the theater school at DePaul University, formerly known as the Goodman School of Drama, where she met your hosts. Ashlyn has made theater of all shapes and sizes around Chicago, with folks like Steep Theater Company, Chicago Shakespeare, and many others. A dynamite performer, a keen-eyed director, a whip-smart writer, and just like a really good dude. Lozano can do it all, people. Catch her in The Leah Project, a digital theater experience or hyper-musical, now playable on a web browser near you. That's Leah, L-E-A, Project.
That was quite an intro. And you know what, Tyler? I feel like for this episode, we need an intro like that because I don't want to give away too much. But
right.
this episode, bit of an uphill climb on this one.
There was some real... We went places with this one.
Yeah, I mean,
we went all sorts of places.
We've been very, positive and upbeat, but like, I don't know, this one gave us some challenges. Maybe is that the right word?
But Ash was up for it. That's the great thing about her. She's always game.
Oh yeah, and it's one of our longer episodes, but I think you'll agree, a conversation that needed to be had.
I agree. I could not agree more.
So
without further ado, let's hear it from Ash herself. I like when podcasts roll right into the roll. Like they're already having a conversation and then they get to the introduction. You know, like I like that. So
yes,
we're figuring that shit out.
I feel like I am the only person in the world who's willing to die on this hill. So the fact that you are letting me,
low key, you might be.
An honor. And that's the thing. It's like when I was making the list of albums for you to choose from, one of the reasons why it took me so long, apart from the like herniated discs, was it wouldn't feel right to start with any other album for me. Like it would be wrong of me.
Yeah.
To do that.
Well, that's the exact forum for this. Like we have just the pod for you, honestly, because that is the whole point here. That is the central conceit, is that you get to die on the hill, even if you're the only person that dies on the hill.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Well then, Ashlyn Lozano.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Welcome to the tribe. We're very happy to have you here. We've brought you before. We've gathered this tribunal.
Yeah.
This one goes to 11 tribunal today for you to make your case for a perfect album. And what album hath thou brought before the tribunal this day?
So I just realized I do have a question for you.
That's great. No, this is the time for questions.
And the question is, what is this one goes to 11? Like, what is the? And you've probably already done this, so if you need to cut this out.
No. We're not going to cut this out at all. This one goes to 11 is a reference to Spinal Tap. Have you seen Spinal Tap?
No, I haven't. And I'm the target audience.
You truly are. It's a Spinal Tap reference.
As a Gen X divorcee, I am, which I'm not actually.
You have big Gen X divorcee energy, though.
They have these amps in the movie, and they're like trying to like advertise that like, well, you know, we rock harder, and their argument for that is the fact that their amps go to 11.
As opposed
Like
to
that's
10.
all they say. Theirs
Yeah.
go to 11.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
That's good. That's
So-
perfect.
So
That's
you're
perfect.
essentially making your case, saying
Yeah.
insert album title here goes to
11. Yeah,
Yes.
and that album, of course, is Third Eye Blind, self-titled. I think I'm the only person in the world who is
Mhm.
willing to make this case, and I'm here today to die on this hill.
if need be. If need be.
Bye.
Everything's on the table is what it
Whatever
sounds like with
means
you.
necessary.
I
But yeah,
appreciate the conviction. That is you are really sticking to this.
High stakes.
I feel exposed. This is going to expose me, especially once you play the song that I picked. Like, it just roasts me. Why don't you? You know?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, this is I think roastability. Roastability for loving an album is an interesting metric by which to choose a perfect album. You know, like how
Well,
roastable
yes.
does this make you? The fact that you brought Third Eye Blind by Third Eye Blind (parentheses 1997).
Well, I think that's what
parentheses.
makes it perfect, because I have this like these erupting mixed emotions about it, obviously, and like deep
Mhm.
shame, nostalgia, joy, love, like all of
Love
those things. And that's what it's like when someone sees who you really are for the first time, you know? It's like
Yeah.
that's what falling in love does to you. Like you put yourself on all of those
Yeah.
in all of those terrible situations.
Do you write lyrics for Natalie Imbruglia, by the way? Because what you just said sounded like Natalie Imbruglia lyrics. You know, she's still around, and
Is she?
Oh yeah.
Mm.
Oh, we can't. She wouldn't go away.
You're right.
Australia's keeping her safe. They're keeping
Thank
keeping
goodness.
the walls up. So yeah.
Well, the way in which you just kind of opened the door for this album, I think, has already earned you a few points in your favor. Michael, do you want to explain the system by which we will be assessing her case made today?
Oh yes, I mean it's an incredibly complicated scientific system, as you will see as the episode progresses and you continue to make your case. Tyler will keep score for you.
I will. And for your intro, I'm going to give you already on the board one Australia's favorite daughter, Natalie Imbruglia, on the board for you.
So, am I hearing that the points do matter?
The points matter very much.
Yeah, why would points not matter, Ashley?
We wouldn't bring points into the picture if they didn't matter.
But you should know that. I mean, we tend to, we're beyond numbers. We're post number, so we are actually like it's a much more qualitative, imagistic.
Yes.
It's you'll see as you go along. The rubric is ever changing.
Sure.
I'll be keeping track of the score.
Okay, good.
As you probably just became aware.
We do give you an opportunity at the beginning of this to evaluate us a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning? That seems unfair.
Well, because we have a segment that we like to do.
Today it's going to be the beginner's guide to Third Eye Blind in 60 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So what Michael is the victim today for the beginner's guide.
Oh, good.
This is good. He is going to give us 60-second recap of who Third Eye Blind are. Or who Third Eye Blind is. Now we're going to get into some...
Or like who they were in 1997, right. Or who they are today. Because it's
they are today, kind of like the larger picture and the album itself in 60 seconds for those who may not be familiar.
Okay. Talk fast.
And you'll have a chance to assess how he did. Michael, are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
All right.
Excuse me. Okay.
You can begin the beginner's guide to Third Eye Blind in 60 seconds in 3, 2, 1.
Third Eye Blind was started by UC Berkeley valedictorian Stephen Jenkins and guitarist Kevin Cadigan, and it's made up of whoever wants to play music with Jenkins and isn't pissing him off at the time. Described by Jenkins as sounding like Edie Brickell meets Suicidal Tendencies, the band got their big break when Jenkins dared the head of Epic Records to put them on a bill with Oasis, which he did. Their self-titled debut came out in April 1997 and stayed on the chart for over a year, going 6 times platinum and churning out 3 top 10 hits, including the ubiquitous Semi-Charmed Life, which Jenkins himself called a dirty, filthy song about snorting speed and getting blowjobs. Though no subsequent albums would enjoy the same success, and original member Kevin Cadigan would be fired from the band under shady circumstances, the song Never Let You Go off their second album, Blue, cracked the top 20. And Jenkins went on to co-write and produce songs for Vanessa Carlton. The band is still active today and released an album just a few months ago, and that's how it's going to be.
Oh, that was really good.
Yeah,
that was really
that
good.
was pretty good. That was pretty good.
All
That's
right, so
right.
you get a chance to score Michael on his job done. What kind of rating would you give Michael, Ash?
And so I make the scale.
Oh yeah.
you get to.
Okay.
Free country.
Yeah.
Of course. I would give you 1,000 miles for including Vanessa Carlton, the songwriting relationship that they had. However, did you know that they also dated
Mhm.
4 or 5 years?
I did. There were a lot of details I couldn't include, like the
Yeah.
crickets falling out of the pinata.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
Isn't
a good
that
one too.
ridiculous.
And also like the fact that before they got started, Stephen Jenkins started a limited organization so that he would always be in charge of Third Eye Blind before they even released a single album, which is why Kevin Cadigan got shafted.
That is what I was actually going to bring up, was the specifics of the shady deal of why Kevin Cadigan left. Yeah, he basically started a corporation.
Yeah.
Or
yeah,
something?
yeah, I don't understand.
Yeah, he like
corporations.
trademarked it. Yeah, and in that way, he kind of reminds me of Dave Grohl, but I think he's,
Mm.
you know, that one phase of Dave Grohl where he went back and re-recorded all of the instruments himself.
Oh shit! I don't know if I
Like
knew
at the
this.
beginning of Foo Fighters.
At the very beginning of Foo Fighters, yeah, it was like their,
Really?
I don't know if it was their first album, but
I think the first album was all him.
yeah, he went back and re-recorded every instrument himself.
No way.
Yeah.
Well, he did, but like
Really
not
love
in like a Smashing Pumpkins. I've forgotten his name
Billy
already.
Corgan.
Not in like a Billy Corgan sort of way. I think it was just weren't his original band members not going to be the band members, so he just like recorded the album by
It
himself.
could be that, but I know that he, at least reflecting on it, was like, oh yeah, that was kind of
Mhm.
shitty of me to do. And it's like you can't tell if Steven is the only person who deeply cared about Third Eye Blind. I mean, he seems like
Mhm.
he's a jerk, like a complete jerk.
Yeah.
But it's like you can't tell if he's the only person who cared and nobody else cared. Like, was he just trying to get everyone on board and everyone was a fuck up? Or more likely, is he just a tyrant?
Well, this is so interesting. So
Because he had
yeah.
many other band members left
right.
throughout the years.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it was just a pattern.
The the diagram on their Wikipedia page, where they track band members, it's like
Yeah.
Stephen Jenkins all the way through, and then it's like a rainbow of people who have
Yeah.
like come and gone.
I
at
love
various
that.
points.
And you said that. I mean, that was clear.
There's no it's not even like the Wes Anderson stable of actors, like at least there's some consistency there. Come on.
Exactly.
There's what struck me about, like finding out more about their early history was how business minded he seems to be. Like somebody who's a musician, a creative, but is also sort of like equally this kind of business shark. I mean,
Well, he's like a Berkeley grad, and
Mhm.
it's almost like if he wasn't into music, would he be like an agent for a surfer or something? Like, he seems like the kind of, he seems a little, yeah, I don't know.
All right, I'll give you 2.5.
He'd be Kelly
I'll give you
Slater's agent.
2.5 thousand points. We'll do 2,500 points for Kelly Slater's agent.
My word.
So I learned today, I was doing some research today because I was like, I need to know about the band a little bit.
Yeah.
And I learned that before Third Eye Blind, Steven was in a rap duo,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
which I guess I have no perspective, like this
Mhm.
album is my childhood. So can you hear that in Third Eye Blind, that he was in a rap duo previously?
Well, this contributes to this narrative, I think, of him like wanting commercial success, because in the Wikipedia early history of the band, it talks about how he basically immediately pivoted from that project to a more traditional quote unquote rock band when he was told that there was no market for what he was doing.
Yeah, although
Very strange.
they did have a song on Beverly Hills 90210. I guess I didn't track it down because I didn't
It's a
want to
different
like
time.
go through that right before
Yeah.
this. So
I think also if we're zooming out a little bit, 1997 was a big year for so the fact that these charted so well, and the fact that these singles charted so well at that time is pretty huge, because man, like a bunch of great albums came out in 97. Immediately the one I always think of is obviously OK Computer, but you know, there's
our obligatory Radiohead
I mean,
reference.
couldn't match up. Couldn't match up.
They clearly didn't have the juice. So let's come back to why. Let's start with your relationship with this album. Let's kind of go back to the beginning, and I would love to hear a little bit more about what you remember of your first times hearing these songs or hearing the whole album. Basically, what does your early life with this album look like?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you the first time because when the album came out, I was 4 years old, and my dad was 22, and my dad was like the person who introduced me to this album. So I don't remember a time in my life before this album at all. Hi. Uh-oh.
Cool.
But like the earliest memories that I have with it are in the car, like riding in the car, long drives in California, in Southern California, which is just very, very much the experience of living in California, is just like being in the car. And listening to the 14-track CD in order in the car. Like that was, and my dad would always skip certain songs because you know, there are some duds. But yeah, those were the earliest memories. And then like once I got my own CD player, I would listen to it in the bus on the way to school. I would listen to it. I mean, I never left it. Like I would always come back to this album. Even now, I come back and listen to this album. Not regularly, but like it's been there for every milestone that I've had.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, and I think also part of it was when I was 12 when my parents got divorced, and no, I wasn't 12. I was 8. But when I was 12, we moved away. My mom and my sister and I left the state. And so we left my dad, who stayed behind. And I was 12 years old. My dad was like 30. And this was a way that this was like the only way that I knew to bridge the distance, was like this album. There are a couple of things, like this album and Lord of the Rings were like the things that I used to try to make a connection with my dad. And it worked. Like it did. So it was always that. I think that's part of why it's so vulnerable for me. It's because this like stupid album is so deeply important to me. Because it was the way I showed love. Like that was how, because like my dad's a great person, and also he was really young and maybe not the best communicator, and I was a child. So like the way that I connected with him was by liking what he liked.
Yeah.
And even like throughout my life, I feel like there were times when I thought that liking the same thing as someone else meant that you were supposed to be friends, or you were supposed to be in a relationship, and sometimes that's true, but like I would use that would be the only thing. So I'd be like, oh, this guy likes Third Eye Blind. Well, I'm in love with him. Like I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question, but
it wouldn't be the only item on the rubric, I'm sure, but it would
certainly
be a big item on the rubric.
But it's not like it was ever cool, like it wasn't oldies, and it was cool.
Yeah, that's a big claim you're making there, that it's not cool.
It was. I mean, so like this is, I think what fascinates me, because I would say half of the albums that we're covering this season existed before the person like discovered them, right? Whereas, because I think it's different when you discover an album because it gets released in your lifetime when you're consciously aware of music, versus if it's an album that existed long before, either like right when you were born or like long before you were born, and then you come to it. Like I feel like it's a different journey. And I can tell you, as someone who was alive in 1997, that Third Eye Blind was cool for about a year. So yes, that's okay. You're right. And was it ever cool, Tyler?
our Michael being an elder millennial, us being sort of
Exactly.
like a
Us
like a
being the
middle year
weird
millennial.
medium, yeah, millennials. Like, it was never old enough to be
Mm,
an oldie,
yeah.
but it wasn't current. So it was like in this weird in between where you probably, I thought, my impression was at least, you really only knew about it if your parents were really young, or you
Mhm.
had an older sibling who was considerably older, or your parents were like deeply immature. Like, those were
Do you think that when you first listened to the album, I mean, I think you made such a personal connection to it that's abundantly clear. Do you think were you drawn to it primarily for the music or for the lyrics, or was it a complete package, or were those things that just weren't even aware of because you were just drawing a personal connection to it?
Lyrics, for sure, I would say. And that's actually one of my criteria for the case that I'm going to make.
Mhm.
Yeah, the lyrics definitely. And I also think that's kind of an embarrassing answer because like I am well aware, but I feel like the lyrics allowed me to, and this is, I don't know how to not go back to personal connection, but like they allowed me to imagine what it would be like to like have all these experiences that I will never have, hopefully, you know?
Yeah. Was it like because here's something I'm always interested in is I feel like certain personalities default towards either judging something based like and I'm getting the sense that you judge based on that emotional thing first and foremost, but then did you also think that it was quote unquote good music? Like, did you think that it was high quality, like well written, well made music? Did you, or was that even a consideration for you at the time?
I think I did. Like and probably part of that was because all the people I knew who knew the music were older than me. And so
that must mean it's good.
Yeah, I think so. It's like, it was, you know, because I was a mature kid and I was wise beyond my years. Like, those were all the things that I was told as a kid. So it went into my, like, sense of identity as, like, someone who likes music that adults like.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
But, like, now, looking back, because when you're asking me what my standout song is, I really tried to, like, think about the instrumentation and, like, is there actually a song that I would say is a good song?
Mm-hmm.
Like, critically? And I think there is, and there are maybe 3.
Yeah.
But
and it's a long album. There's a lot of songs on this album.
I know. But like at the time, so my lens on that has totally changed.
Sure.
You know, because it's not, that's where the shame comes from. It's not the same thing as saying like, OK Computer is a great album. You know, it's like, because I feel
based on what the public perception is of them as a band or the album, you mean?
Yeah, I think so. And then also just the you know, Radiohead is like way more self-serious, and they, you know, they work with 12-tone pianos and all that stuff. And like Third Eye Blind is not doing that. So
no.
Well, but like, I mean, but that's not, I mean, because sometimes some people would argue that's to Radiohead's detriment, right? The fact that, I mean, for some people, a band like Radiohead is just so inaccessible because they just, it feels like they're in outer space for some people. And I think some people might even feel like Radiohead is condescending to them in some ways, where I mean, I you shouldn't discount the value of a song that like has a good beat and, you know,
sure.
it's got a good beat and you can dance to it, right? Like that's all you need.
Yeah.
And it's all the more interesting that they opened for Oasis of all bands, who were Oasis was, you know, knowing how they feel about the whole Radiohead thing. They just think Radiohead is super lame and up their own keister. So
they also opened for Smash Mouth when my dad saw them.
That must have been a night.
You know, we've been very positive, a lot of positivity on this podcast, but you invoked Smash Mouth, and I'm afraid I can't. I can't abide.
Yeah,
I couldn't make a case for a Smash Mouth album, but I could make a case for a Smash Mouth track.
For a Smash Mouth track in a certain context, for sure.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Smash Mouth was the king. The band was the king because Is the lead singer, is his name just Smash Mouth? Because if it's not, he should get it changed. He should change his name to Smash Mouth.
I don't know his name.
That poor guy. But
I'm sure he's doing fine. I'm sure his bank account is well.
I actually saw a video. I saw a video of him recently, and he looks like he's a little run down. Poor guy. Yeah,
like that guy from Sum 41.
Yeah, exactly.
Every time you see him, you're like, oh no.
Yeah, you're like, I hope you're okay. So wherever you are out there, Smash Mouth,
we wish you well.
Mr. Smash Mouth. That's Mr. Smash Mouth.
Yeah, Mr. Smash Mouth.
Mr. Mouth.
We hope. Yeah, Mr. Yeah, that's my father. Call me Smash. Wherever you are out there, Smash, I hope you're doing okay. And, please take care of yourself.
I know you talked about being drawn to lyrics, and we talked a little about their voices. I mean, I think there's a late 90s sneer to modern rock. Like there's sometimes the way Stephen Jenkins will sing certain words, like you can sort of see what his face is doing in your mind when he sings the word.
Yeah.
There's that sort of we get fast and loose with correct pronunciation of words in the late 90s.
Absolutely.
In a big way.
Oh yes, and you would know all about that, wouldn't you, Pearl Jam?
All right. I'm feeling very attacked right now. Okay.
I'm gonna give Ashlyn 3 daddies.
Is that bad?
That's a good thing. 3 daddies.
Oh.
3 daddies.
And then Jeremy. Yeah.
We'll get to Pearl Jam one of these days.
I would like to take this opportunity. I think you mentioned you started talking a little bit about standout track. I think it's probably time for us to hear one.
Yeah.
So what have you chosen as for you? What's the standout track on this album, and why did you pick it?
Yes. So, well, Michael, let me drive for a minute. At any point,
Jesus, take the wheel.
At any point, should I lay out in list form my criteria for the perfect album?
Oh, that's coming. That's
okay. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Then you can drive now. Yes. So,
God love you.
My standout track is, of course, Motorcycle Drive-By, track 13 on Third Eye Blind's self-titled. I chose this track for purely emotional reasons. No, I think that I actually don't think it's the best track on the album, but I do think it is the most vulnerable and the most risky and the most sentimental. And that's why I think it's the most risky. Yeah, I also think it is, the imagery is very clear. And so from my perspective, it puts you exactly where the song is, which is like from New York City to the beach, in California. Yeah, it just, I don't know. It has a sound that's very California. It's exactly of the time and place in which it was born. It's kind of humorless. And I think a lot of the album has humor in it. And I don't think this song really does. So I think it's, yeah, I don't know. And I love the opening lick. I love the guitar. I love the scream or the shouting. We're talking about Steven's voice a little bit. He's not a screamer, but he is a shouter. And I feel like he's very 1997 in that regard.
It wasn't a screaming time. You're right.
No, it wasn't a screaming time, but it was a time.
Yeah.
And he delivers that, I would say 6 or 7 times in this album.
It was his cross to bear.
Yeah. And I think the build sonically, the build is very satisfying. I don't know if that's the correct terminology, but when it blows its load, it it does it the right way.
Sure. Yeah, I see that.
And then it comes back down at the end. It's extremely lonely, and so I think it's it's the kind of song. It's an extremely lonely song.
Yeah,
and I think that's beautiful.
Well, why don't we listen to Motorcycle Drive-By, and Tyler's going to update the scoreboard with well, he's just going to update the scoreboard. This is Motorcycle Drive-By. Let's take a listen.
That's the end of part 1. If you access this episode via our YouTube playlist, you're about to hear our guest's standout track. If you'd like to jump ahead to part 2, you'll find a link in the description of this episode.